Howdy folks, I'm MeetTheName. And today, I'll be giving a few quick thoughts on the 2024 science fiction action comedy film, Borderlands. This film is directed by Eli Roth, who is known for R-rated gore fests, and instead we get a PG-13 film with a lot of its soul missing. Let's dig into that a bit, shall we, by starting with the general story. I'm going to put in about as much effort in describing the story as the actual filmmakers did, by just going with a quick blurb from my local theater. To start, returning to her home planet, an infamous outlaw forms an unexpected alliance with a team of unlikely heroes. Together, they battle alien monsters and dangerous bandits to find a missing girl who holds the key to unimaginable power. As you can tell, it's not exactly a very imaginative story. If you've seen something like Guardians of the Galaxy, think of this like the Great Value version of that. It's full of plot holes and cliches, and that's not to say necessarily that, cliches are always a bad thing, but in the case of this film, they are done without any sort of, awareness that they are cliches. The film seems to rush into plot points without giving the audience time to acclimate to what's going on in the film. Characters will just show up in places even though they shouldn't even know where this place is. They just sort of show up. And it also plays things way too safe. Never once at all in the film did I really think any of the characters were in danger. The stakes aren't really that great. It's just about whether or not an evil megacorporation gets an alien power. And honestly, it just doesn't really have that much of appreciation or fondness for the source material that it's based upon. It has an amalgamation of characters from Borderlands 1 and 2, but with none of the personality that they usually have in those games. Which, to be fair, terrible writing in Borderlands games is pretty commonplace, so I guess you could say this actually is somewhat true to the source material. I personally think if the story had stayed R-rated and kept in the blood, gore, and violence, it would have been much better received. Deadpool and Wolverine shows R-rated films can succeed in this climate, and I feel like the need to make it PG-13 was a knee-jerk reaction by the studio in order to try to rake in as large of an audience as possible, without realizing that they do potentially alienate their most loyal fans. Honestly, they should have taken cues from James Gunn's The Suicide Squad and made it about a band of killers that come together and inadvertently save the planet while trying to collect loot from corrupt megacorporations. Sort of keep it in line with what the games are all about. Heck, there's a lot that they could have done but just didn't. For instance, guns are not very important to this story, which, again, given that this is an adaptation of a franchise that is all about weaponry, is a bit weird. I'm just saying, they missed out on making officially licensed Nerf guns and stuff. Lots of potential for merchandising. Closest you get is a claptrap popcorn bucket. Moving on from the story talk, let's talk a bit about the characters. In my opinion, they're very flat. They don't have much room to really grow. And I'll be honest, almost everyone feels miscasted except for the guy that plays Krieg, which is a very hard role to mess up. All he does is say the occasional funny bandit thing and throw people around. So, probably the most authentic actor to the character in this film. I'll also give an honorable mention to Kevin Hart, who was also surprisingly decent given his track record with comedy films. He actually plays a pretty decent straight man in this. Now, I'm going to say something that I never thought I would say, but for once, I think Jack Black should not have been casted for a movie. His voice just doesn't match Claptrap that well. They should have just stuck with an actual video game voice actor, but I guess they really needed that star power. Another thing that was weird is, in the film, they keep making remarks that Lilith is way too old to be bounty hunting and adventuring. After a while, it kind of starts to feel a bit mean-spirited towards the actress. I feel bad for Cate Blanchette. And I don't want to sound ageist here, but I really think that they maybe should have went with younger, more unknown talent that could have taken the characters in this film and made them their own. And instead, you mostly just see name brand actor in X role. Moving on, let's talk about the sets, vehicles, and costumes. Now, I think that the set design was surprisingly done very well. Everything felt very Pandoran, as in, it kind of just looked like a giant garbage heap. Really, there are no complaints there. They used up the $115 million budget for a profit of only $10 million during its opening weekend. Now, I thought vehicle designs were also very decent, although most of them are just CGI, I'm pretty sure. So they also look a bit wonky at times, which is strange because they had 3 years worth of post-production to really work on the CGI in this film. A positive I do have is that I thought the costuming was done very well. The people in the film do look like their characters in the games. There's this one person who plays Marcus in the game, and he looks really, really closely to what the guy looks like in the games. Alongside an actress who plays Mad Moxie as well, looks really close to what she looks like in the game. Although, I'll also say that at some times, helmets that soldiers in the film were wearing looked to be a bit too oversized to really fit them that well. Moving on, I think some of the effects were done good as well. The aliens in the film look really well polished, which again, given 3 years worth of post-production, I'd expect that they would. And despite that, there are some green screen effects in the film that seem very shoddy. Apparently, this film had extensive reshoots done by Tim Miller, the guy who worked on the Deadpool films, and I'm pretty sure he really should have looked more closely at their quality, because, woof. Yeah, some of these green screen effects are not pretty. Another positive I'll give out is the score. The score is composed by Steve Jablonsky, and overall, I thought it was pretty decent. It reminded me a lot of the soundtrack from Borderlands 2. Very industrial, there's some synthy stuff going on. Pretty decent. There was also licensed music that was used occasionally in the film, but it was surprisingly sparse. So that's at least something that they did not try to rip off from Guardians of the Galaxy, which I am thankful for. Although in those films it's actually done well, so in this film it would not have done as well. So overall, I would have to say that Borderlands is a heavily flawed film. It's had years of post-production that seem to only make it worse. But it's not a terrible film. But it is highly forgettable. Which is even worse, because at least a terrible film would have something more worth talking about. And at the same time, I do feel bad for dogging on this film so much. While the actors, producers, and other executives may not have cared as much for it, the people who helped create the effects, costumes, and probably even the music certainly did seem like they put their all into it. And at the end of the day, films are creative endeavors, and no one wants to set out to make a bad film. It's just a shame that this one turned out to be not that good. What I'm trying to say is, there was effort put into this movie. And it's a shame that things had to turn out the way that they did. With that said, I cannot recommend this movie. It's not a product that's worth seeing. At least not in theaters. If you're bored one night in, let's say, about 3 years, maybe catch it on streaming. Eat a pizza and think about how lucky you were to not spend money on seeing it in theaters. I really do hate having to be so critical on a film, but it is the truth. Don't go and see this film. Go and save your money for something else. Howdy, folks. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I apologize if it seems a bit more dour than usual, but Borderlands kinda took a lot of the wind out of my sails. I was actually looking forward to it a bit. If you have any other film, television, or game recommendations for me, please feel free to leave them down in the comments below. Also, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I have a whole bunch more videos on the channel, so if you're new to it, feel free to check those out too. With all that said, I hope you all have a wonderful day.